It is the Situation Room, broadcasting on SpiceFM and also streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. We're live streaming the show on YouTube, SpiceFM KE, as well as to Facebook, SpiceFM KE. And for the next 1 hour, we are live on KTN Home. It's the first day of February 2022. Oh, which reminds me, going by his own words and his own promise, in 6 weeks' time, President Uhuru Kenyatta will drive on this expressway.
And when was this statement made?
In December, he said, March.
Oh, this expressway.
This one of ours.
Well, even now he can drive. Doesn't have to wait for those 6 weeks to lapse. No, that can happen even now. I see vehicles that I'm certain belong to those who are actually who have the responsibility of ensuring that the works are completed, so he can drive.
Okay, so let me irritate the pearl just a little bit. What he meant is that the expressway then would be completed.
In March. It won't. It won't be.
No?
No, it won't be completed.
In 6 weeks' time. So let's make it, what do you want to make it? 9 weeks?
Why are
So that we go to the end of March?
I mean,
Okay.
why is it that
In
you're
9
stuck on the
weeks'
8 weeks?
time.
Why don't you give it a tag of months? Then I think you will be able to understand what's happening.
Okay,
By
1.5
the end
months.
of next month.
This particular highway will not be complete by the end of March.
In fact, the president said he'll drive from Machakos Junction all the way to Maimahiu Junction. All those constructions will be completed.
He can, even now he can drive. But he has to break his journey.
Somewhere.
Somewhere he'll have to
Diversion,
stop.
here,
Maybe
there.
board an earth mover, get to one stage, board a lorry, go to another. Then, I mean, this highway will not. How many deadlines have we been given with regards to this particular highway? You tell me, how many?
So are you being realistic or are you being just Debbie Downer?
No, I am being realistic because I traverse this road daily. Every single day. And I've been doing this since they started putting it up.
The president should talk to you. Because the people he's talking
The
to.
president goes by what he is told. And those people are lying to him. This particular highway will not be complete at the end of March. He's being lied to.
Okay. Why don't you give us the day's proverb?
Yes. Kupotea njia ndio kujua.
So when he gets on it,
Then he will know.
that's how he'll know the road.
Yes. And if he really wants to understand it, don't wait for the 6 weeks. Start now. The way he likes surprising people, let him surprise himself by just saying, okay, you told me, and each week we are supposed to see this sort of progress. Let him come and traverse this highway and let him see for himself. And let him estimate as a layperson whether 6 weeks will be enough to actually complete.
complete this road.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about food security. And the Global Hunger Index that was released this year for the 2021 year. And we have two guests in the studio joining us this morning. One of them is Stella Kimani. She's a nutrition coordinator at Welthungerhilfe. She'll tell us what that is. And the second guest is Beldine Atieno, Senior Manager, Governance and Advocacy at Concern Worldwide. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Those are the hot seats that you're occupying. Let's talk about food security and the state of food security in the world, and then we come back into Kenya. But let's first understand your organizations. Stella,
Yes.
Welthungerhilfe.
Right.
Who are you?
So, Welthungerhilfe, or WHH, is a German international organization, and we have programs across over 60 countries in the world, and Kenya is one of them. And in Kenya, we cover at least 12 counties, and our programming range from sustainable food and nutrition security to improving food systems to providing sustainable water, sanitation and health and hygiene, humanitarian aid, development, we're in education as well, supporting pastoral communities to be resilient, among many other programs. So we work either directly implementing as Veltunga Hilfe, or we work through different national local partners who implement our projects as well.
In how many parts of the world are you located?
So we're in 64 countries and still spreading our wings. So anywhere that there's a hunger problem, you will find Veltunga Hilfe, because our goal and our vision is a world without hunger. So where there's hunger, then we will be there to work towards making sure that nobody's hungry. Yes.
The people who came up with the concept, the idea, and eventually this particular organization, what is it that spurred them to start it? What had they seen? What had they experienced?
Basically, Veltunga Hilfe came about as the international. There was an international convention, and there was, a way forward that nobody should really be struggling with hunger, because hunger is the biggest solvable problem in the world. There are tangible solutions that we can implement to solve the hunger problem, and German was formed, just like we have other international UN bodies. So Veltunga Hilfe is the German, version of organizations like FAO.
How old is it?
So in Kenya, we've been around since the 1970s. However, when we came into Kenya, we were implementing through national partners. In fact, it's just in the recent years after our registration in Kenya in the 1990s that we started to implement some of the projects as Veltunga Hilfe. However, throughout the world, in all the countries that we're in, we make use of the national organizations because they're the ones who know the national problems, and we believe in having local solutions.
I'm going to ask you an unfair question.
Right.
Okay. So I take it that in Germany, there is no hunger. There are no places where people go hungry.
Well, there's hunger around the world, everywhere, from the most developed countries to the least, if you look at the development index. However, some countries have had a bit of an unfair share of this problem, and it's because of a myriad, so many different issues that could cause that. But for sure, there are problems everywhere, There is. So hunger is everywhere. And sometimes, the different types of hunger. Even us in this room, there's hunger that you see. And a lot of times when people hear about hunger, they think of a thin, malnourished child or adult. But there is hidden hunger, which is micronutrient deficiency. Yeah, that is the vitamins and the minerals. And those ones you mostly know through disease. So that's why it's called hidden hunger. And that is everywhere around the world, not just Africa or third world countries.
Okay.
Yes.
Beldine,
Yes.
tell us about Concern Worldwide.
Concern Worldwide is an Irish INGO that was formed in the 1968. So we are about 60 years old globally. And across the world, we work in over 24 countries, and Kenya is one of them. In Kenya, Concern has been present since 2002. Started off with programs in the urban informal settlements, specifically looking at education, and then expanded to Nyanza. And then around 2008, we began working in the ASAL regions. So our main programs are education. We have livelihoods, health and nutrition, and a governance component where we work with the communities to empower them on their rights and enable them to participate in development issues concerning them. And we've been working very closely with the WHH to produce this report for the last 16 years. And globally, Concern is known for its nutrition-specific interventions. And also we promote resilience through our livelihoods programming. In Kenya specifically, we've been working with the pastoralists in the northern ASAL areas, and in the urban informal settlements also we've been working with the county government to come up with a system to detect food crisis within the urban informal settlements. In Kenya, we work through We work through the government, that is the Ministry of Health. We work with the Ministry of Agriculture, that is at the national and at the county level. And then from our education program, we just work with the schools as well as the Ministry of Education. We also have local partners that we've worked with before on development, and also right now in humanitarian crises such as the current ongoing drought, we also partner with local NGOs. Yeah.
So we're going to discuss the Global Hunger Index. There's so many indices in the world. Global Development Index and other. Why the Global Hunger Index, and what does it show, Stella?
So as I mentioned, hunger is the biggest solvable problem. And for you to be able to solve a problem, you need to, try to figure out through research the magnitude of the problem itself and who is, suffering from the problem. And out of, for the GHI Global Hunger Index for 2021, 116 countries were listed and assessed. And the reason why that is very important is because it's looking at the countries that suffer the most from hunger around the world and analyzing different parameters of malnutrition and agriculture, food systems, but mostly global acute malnutrition, which is basically moderate and severe malnutrition, to see how countries are faring and what the progress is. So just to give a snapshot, like in 2019, Kenya was position 86 out of 116. And in 2021, Kenya was position 87. So there's progress, but in the opposite direction, not in the direction we want to be progressing towards. You want to be not even in the list of problems that have hunger, especially if you're talking about Kenya, and this is 69 years post-independence. So it's important to have research because that also helps us to advocate and push for policies and try to assess deeper what is the problem. So data is very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just taking a snapshot then of this survey and just looking globally first before even able to come and bring things home. If I'm looking at Sub-Saharan Africa, from what you've said, from what this report is saying, tends to be in the serious range, whereby we have serious issues of hunger, alarming issues of hunger in Central Africa, and then extremely alarming issues in some parts of East Africa. What are the indicators then now you use to then determine that there are hunger issues in particular countries?
So when it comes to hunger and malnutrition, the result of hunger, is whether it's acute or prolonged, which is chronic hunger, is malnutrition. And the index uses malnutrition values to assess how countries are faring and among other parameters. So the list will only show like how we are doing in terms of different countries are doing in terms of global acute malnutrition. However, we go deeper. If you look at the report, you'll see that we also look at other drivers of these issues. For instance, for Kenya, we've had different threats to food and nutrition security, from drought to locusts to the COVID-19 pandemic, to livestock diseases, so to political problems, security issues for some of the countries you're seeing as serious. Yeah. You'll notice some of them also have serious insecurity problems, to cattle rustling. So there are many drivers and root causes of malnutrition, but the end result of it, they manifest as, is malnutrition, and malnutrition then will affect different sectors across the board, from health to.
So sorry, Stella. So are we saying that there are many reasons why an individual then who makes up a larger unit would be malnourished?
Absolutely.
And so we're saying we're looking at insecurity, instability in terms of political government and things like that.
Yes.
Inability to plant and grow. All of those things then contribute to this malnutrition, but malnutrition is the thing that you look at.
Absolutely, because when you look at what causes malnutrition at the top, it's manifested as either poor health or somebody who is stunted, which means too short for their age. But when you go a layer deeper, looking at the UNICEF framework for malnutrition, a layer deeper than that, you'll find that you'll ask yourself, why is this person hungry? Why are they malnourished? And then you find out that it's either they don't have adequate food in the household, and again, that has its causes. Either they're not producing enough or they cannot access it from the market because of socioeconomic problems.
Sure.
And if they're not getting enough, the other reason for malnutrition also is disease. Then you ask yourself, if the cause is the person or the household does not have enough food, what's the reason? They may not have access to land. They may not have access to water for irrigation or for farming. Maybe they are depending on rain-fed agriculture. And if they are in arid and semi-arid lands, obviously our rain has not been performing well at all. Then you go a layer deeper and ask yourself, if that is the underlying problem, what is the root cause of it?
And this is a constant state of affairs. So it has to be constant.
Yes.
And then for you to be able to come up with these numbers, it has to
Absolutely.
be. And what time are we looking at here? Are we saying that for a year?
Yeah.
Or are we saying for over 2 years, if a group of people or an individual has remained in this state, then we can then now use that as indicators for general information or data.
So apart from, in addition to what you've just mentioned, we also look at country-specific data. For instance, we look at demographic and health surveys. Unfortunately, Kenya, I think the last one we did was 2014, and the next one was supposed to be done 5 years later, but because of, I guess, a lot of issues, and again, the pandemic hit, then it was not done in 2021 when it was scheduled. And then we also look at other data from international organizations, from FAO to UNICEF to WHO. So there are different organizations also you look at in terms of data, but the most reliable data you can ever find is country-specific data, because the Kenya Demographic Health Survey is not something that we can say, oh, this was done by an international organization. They may have a different agenda in this, Those are purely conducted by the different countries. So the main set of data that is normally analyzed in the Global Hunger Index is actually the demographic and health surveys of the different countries. And unfortunately, some of them don't have clear data. Like for Kenya, we are looking, we're talking about 2014. So we had to rely more on other organizations' data. So that is one of the challenges also we are seeing in Kenya. And when you start now breaking down even to counties, you'll find that some counties hardly have any data on hunger. Yet, hunger is nutrition is the main foundation of a person's living,
I'm looking at something that you've indicated here, data underlying the calculation of the Global Hunger Index scores.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at undernourishment.
Yes.
Then there's stunting.
Yes.
Then there's wasting.
Yes.
Then there's under 5 mortality.
Yes.
Now, from what I've read, it means that you aggregate this. Before you score, you look at all these indicators, and this is what provides you with an idea of where this particular country stands with regards to hunger.
Absolutely. Yes, that's correct.
I've got that one right?
Yes.
Hey, you too. I got that
You
one
got it
right.
right.
done.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah,
Now ask a
that's
question.
correct. That's accurate.
After shining, now ask a question.
You've both mentioned how you work with existing government institutions and other players in this particular field. What I'd like you to do for us, is walk us through this working with. What do you actually do? And when you do it, what results are you hoping to get? And then, how often do you actually get the results that you're hoping for? And if you don't, what hinders you from getting them? Because when you say we are supported, that one, broad word, working with again, broad word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because for you to have existed this long, and as for concern, there are things that you do, and you've been doing them for a long time.
Right.
And the people you work with know what you do. They understand. They've seen the benefits. I don't. Many other people don't. So just You can walk us through, then you can also walk us through Beldine,
Yes.
through how it is you go through these processes.
Absolutely. So we have different programs and focus areas when it comes to sustainable food and nutrition security. And one of the ways that we work is, first of all, when an organization, like when we have funding, the first step is to figure out whether we are self-implementing the project. For instance, if it's something to do with agriculture, yeah, or we'll have a local partner implement the project. But even before that, at project conception stage, we work with communities, first of all, to analyze what is the problem within a certain community. Because, you can't just bring desk, solutions to a community problem. So we work with communities to figure out what the issues are, and we also discuss solutions with them. And that is when the money comes in for how to implement those different programs. And the government, basically non-government organizations are supposed to complement what government is currently doing. So we are informed by government strategies. For instance, for nutrition, we have the agri-nutrition strategy, we have the food and nutrition security policy implementation framework, which is the implementation framework is from 2017 to 2022. So we need to be revising that already. And we have different other strategic documents that we work with when we are implementing different activities. And the different activities are geared towards providing specific solutions that are in the different communities, because again, each community has its own unique set of problems. And again, the solutions are also unique to those different communities, although across the board, you'll see a lot of, similarities. Other than that, now that's from a needs-based approach, which is where you identify a need, you look at what government has planned in terms of fulfilling those needs for its people, and then we complement that. But there's another approach we use that we've realized is maybe more sustainable than a needs-based approach, because in a needs-based approach, you're more of a humanitarian, you're seeing a need and you're trying to fulfill the need. But it's not always sustainable. So Veltunga Hilfe we have now started implementing rights-based approaches. So we look at the Constitution of Kenya, we look at the different policy documents and the legal framework. For instance, for hunger, if you look at the Constitution of Kenya, Article 43(1)(c) indicates that every person has the right to be free from hunger and to food of adequate quality and safety. And again, it says the same in Article 53(1)(c) for children, where they are entitled, or just for being human, they are entitled to the right to adequate nutrition. So then you ask yourself, if we have a legal framework in the Constitution for fulfilling the right to food, why is it then that Kenyans are still hungry? Is it that we are not even implementing our own constitution? Is it that we have a resource problem, or what is the problem? And then we go to the duty bearers. Now, the duty bearers is everybody who has the duty to fulfill or has a duty towards implementing of these policies. And we talk to them, and with one of our programs running right now called Strengthening Rural Governance for the Right to Food, we've realized that some of the duty bearers don't even know the legal framework for the right to food. And we have to start by sensitizing them and also making them know that they are both duty bearers and rights holders to be able to fulfill their rights and that of other people. Then we talk to the rights holders, and that is you and I, who we call the mwananchi. And we educate them also on why they cannot treat food as aid, and why food is not just some help you get from your duty bearer, your politician. It's a right that is enshrined in the Constitution. So it has to be something that you're not begging for, something that you're not requesting for. So these are some of the approaches that we are working on, and it includes a lot of advocacy from the government, because again, there's always the conversation around the resources are not enough. Resources will never be adequate, population keeps increasing and a lot of other factors and a lot of shocks, but it's about working together with government and other stakeholders to complement each other to make things work.
Beldine, tell us about the way that you work with the other organizations, and also respond to this particular issue that has been highlighted in the 2021 Global Hunger Index, which is the threat of the 3 Cs: conflict, climate change, COVID-19, and how that impacted food security and the issue of hunger globally, especially looking at Kenya?
Okay. Thanks so much. So for Concern Worldwide, when we begin or enter into a country, we begin with a contextual analysis, just looking at what is the prevailing situation at the community level as well as on the government systems. So that's the first step that we take. And then from there on, we have been implementing a human rights-based approach where we work both with government and with communities. For government, we support government systems. And what this means is that we are guided by the national policies and strategies. And at county level, we also look at what is the county aiming to achieve, especially from their county integrated development plans. And narrowing down specifically to, let's say, for example, the health and nutrition sector or the livestock sector, we begin with a conversation, a self-assessment with the health and nutrition workers in the health department. And globally, there is an approach called health system strengthening. So we look at what are the governance issues within the health system, what are the supply and commodity issues, logistics, do the health workers have enough capacity in terms of training, or do they have enough staff to serve the population that we are targeting. So we start with a gap analysis, which is done jointly with the health workers. And once the gaps have been identified, then we come up with an action plan or a work plan to achieve or to make this improvements within the system that can help us to get quality services delivered to the target population. So, for example, with the health and nutrition programs, we have worked with the county governments, various county governments, Marsabit, Turkana, Tana River, Nairobi. We've supported them to develop their county nutrition action plans that are based on the national nutrition action plan that we have. So we've supported policy development and also training for health workers. So, for example, there are approaches such as infant and young child feeding. Health workers receive training and they're therefore able to support communities to be able to have practices such as breastfeeding, which contributes a lot to the nutrition of children that are between 0 to 24 months. And then on the community side, we use an approach that we call community conversations approach. Again, we go in not as the expert, but as someone who is seeking to work together with the community to achieve their development concerns. So what we do is we have conversations, and we are keeping in mind that we are working with communities that have high levels of illiteracy. So we have very simple tools that include storytelling, strategic questioning, and we come up with
Beldine,
the barriers.
Which are these communities that have high levels of literacy?
In Marsabit County, for instance, we have pastoralists where at least 94% of the adult population is illiterate. So those are some of the communities that we are targeting. And we engage in conversations using very simple tools, trying to understand what are the barriers that they are facing in terms of access to services. So, for example, we have barriers such as we have a few number of health facilities, vast geographical distances where a mother has to walk several kilometers to be able to access health services. So those are some of the challenges that we are able to unpack. We also have gender dynamics that also affect these communities and even us as well, because you find in most families, women eat last, or girls eat after the men and the boys. So there's also issues around how food is shared within a household. And you can imagine in these ASAL areas where there's minimal amount of food that is available, and women and children probably are the last to eat. So those are some of the issues that we discuss, and then come up with plans of how we can change the behaviors and food taboos. Also, we have things like food taboos where you'll find women are not supposed to eat certain parts of chicken or certain types of meat or even eggs. So those also contribute to the issue around malnutrition.
So with all these many organizations such as yourselves working in this sector, looking at food security, the government with an entire ministry and very many state departments and very many organizations and supported programs working on food security, we still find ourselves in a position of food insecurity in the country. And despite of the very many strategies, in fact, even the index itself highlight some of those strategies that are in place. When you talk about the 3 C's, conflict is not new. Conflict has been there in the country for many years, and those communities that you're talking about are affected by conflict.
Yes.
Climate change has been there for a while.
Yeah.
COVID is the one that you can say, okay, so this was a new thing, but those other two, there are strategies for dealing with conflict. The Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Strategy, rolled out by the government.
Yes.
We have the new one that the Ministry of Agriculture was just rolling out 2 years ago, the Agricultural Sector Transformational and Growth Strategy, and very many other strategies in place. And then your work on the ground.
Yeah.
Why is it that we still find ourselves food insecure in Kenya, Stella?
Well, it's one thing to have policies, and it's another to implement them and make sure that there are adequate resources to implement those policies, and also have a workable approach to implement them. Looking at the 3 C's that you mentioned and what I'd mentioned earlier about the root causes of hunger, basically, the root causes of hunger and the UNICEF conceptual framework of malnutrition is something that has been there for years. And what you're mentioning as the 3 C's are just a tip of the iceberg. There's so many other drivers of hunger and malnutrition. And COVID-19 is not the only pandemic we've dealt with. You know, there have been other serious diseases and issues affecting both humans and livestock. Yes, yet we still find ourselves here. And as I mentioned from our approach as Veltunga Hilfe, part of it has been the approach. One, when organization takes only a needs-based approach to solving a problem like hunger that affects literally each and every one of us, it means that I'm looking at the problem you have, and if your problem is food, I want to bring you food. Right. But how do I make sure that you are resilient enough and I have made your situation sustainable enough such that you're not dependent on me, either as government or an organization, to continue trying to solve that problem for you. And that means that we need to tweak our strategies and our implementation or our way of doing things to make communities more resilient and more sustainable. And how do we do this? Looking at agriculture. For years, we've been looking at agriculture from a linear approach, which means we are looking at value chains. So if somebody is producing maize, which is what we are always talking about in this country, you're thinking about the farmer, the land they have, the inputs, but then you're not thinking about what is the final product or the value of this product and where it will end up from farm to fork. And that is what we call a systemic approach. So you're looking at a food system which is affected by many other systems that are contained in different other sectors, as opposed to looking at a maize smallholder farmer as just somebody who needs to be given farm subsidies. It's important. Yeah. But again, how is the state of the land they are farming on? What kind of inputs are they using? Are they causing sickness? You know, is the food going to be safe for people to eat? Are the farming activities they are engaged in sustainable, or is it what again is still driving the global climate change problem? So are we trying to solve a problem by digging deeper into another problem?
Stella.
Yes.
Given what you do,
absolutely, yes.
What would success look like?
Looking at food systems.
When you finished all your work and looked at the food systems,
yes,
what do you expect to see? A layman who doesn't even understand the term food index and
yes,
food systems
yes,
looks at it and says, aha.
Yes.
What would it look like?
Now, what it would look like will come from understanding what we need to do to get there. Now, it's important for us to understand the food as a system because most of our farmers are smallholder farmers. And they have very small plots of land. How do we make it more productive, right? Because the end result is to make sure that everybody, and this is what it should look like, where every person is not suffering from hunger. So they have accessible food, and the food is safe. The food is sustainable, meaning every household and every person can access food at all times. And also, if they cannot farm the food, for instance, the people in Nairobi, they are able to access it because they have economic power to be able to buy the food. But for you to buy the food, it has to be available in the market, no?
Yep.
And for it to be available in the market, you have to figure out how it's getting from the smallholder farmer. And that means we have to look at other systems, from infrastructure, our trading systems. Are we just dealing with middlemen who are making our farmers poorer? That is why I'm saying looking at systems as opposed to just looking at a farmer as a person who is just produces food makes more sense, because it will bring more value to the farmer and different households. They are going to get economic power because they're earning more money from their farming activities, and the economic triple effect of that goes beyond that small household and bursts into the entire economy, because most of our farmers are smallholder and most are also women. So again, we have to look even into culture issues. And again, about the 3 C's, when you're looking at things around climate change, we have a lot of early warning systems. Like right now we have drought. Yeah. We had early warning systems, but somehow every year, if it's not drought, it's flood. If it's not flood, it's a livestock outbreak of disease. Yet we have different organizations, like we have the Global Hunger Index. We have different other early warning systems. We have drought rapid response systems. But what is the problem? Because clearly the policies are there. But are we making sure that resources are available? Mainly from the government, because also we can't leave the issue of hunger to developmental organizations only and say that, okay, here are the policy documents. We have X number of non-governmental organizations and private organizations, and now we can implement this. It's about time we held government and the political elite in this country into account about their own policies, about their own, like the Big Four agenda, which is now...
But so long as... No, let me not ask that question. What does success look like? Beldine?
So what success looks like for us, especially from a policy advocacy point of view,
yes,
is having political goodwill and commitment towards food and nutrition security. In the context where we work in, for example, in the ASALs, 80% of the residents of those areas depend on pastoralism. But if you look at the investment by the government in terms of livestock sector, it's very minimal. And if you look at agriculture sector as a whole, I think Kenya is very far from meeting the 10% requirement by the Maputo Declaration. So I think adequate investment of resources towards supporting farmers will be one of the key indicators of success. Another key indicator of success will be having women and youth also being involved in production, and also ensuring that they have equal access to the market, because we have a youthful population. I think over 75% of the population in Kenya is youth, and if we don't engage them and we leave the agriculture to the older population, then what is it that we'll be looking at? So I think involvement of all actors in equitably in food systems, in production, and also in ensuring that they have access to income opportunities will be one of the indicators of success.
There are many things.
Yes.
You talk about agriculture, if we're talking about, small scale to small to medium scale farming, but still looking at the fact that a lot is then exported and then brought back into the country. And I really do believe and agree that in order to spur on an economy, then you also need to be producing. Right? So then it would affect some of these things that we are looking at now. And I think that's one of the things that you talk about. So, and then to have these interlocking systems working together, you kill so many birds then with one stone. If again, we're coming back to this malnutrition that we are talking about, there's so many factors then that affect it. Where is government in these conversations that you're having, in these activities that you're now performing? What's the government speak about its role and its responsibility in terms of things like now spurring on an economy when it comes to manufacturing and things like that? Where is the participation? Where have we reached?
I think we are just coming from a year of nutrition, which was 2021, where the government has made various international commitments during the United Nations Food Systems Summit that was in September last year, and we also had the Nutrition for Growth Summit that was in December. And the government reiterated that they are focused on 100% food security. In terms of the food systems, they also added additional commitments to work with the youth. They added commitments to address climate change. So I think the government has put in place commitments, and what we now need to see is action to translate these commitments into reality, so that the people on the ground can be able to feel the impact of these decisions. The other action that we'd like to see from government is investment again, both in the health and nutrition sector as well as in the agriculture sector. We really need to see this money trickling down to the counties. If you look at since 2017, we've had instances where there's delayed cash flow from the national government to the county government, yet the county government is the one that is at the front line dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at the social economic indicators such as health, you will see a decline in public service delivery whenever there's this delayed cash flows. So I think we need more coordinated approach between national and county government to see the final outcomes of the policies that have been passed.
Who's to carry that? Who's to bear these cards? All those things that you've said, you know,
Yeah.
the civil society organizations working in this space know. Many of you are in this space.
Yes.
The government knows. The policymakers, the people who are experts in the Ministry of Agriculture and the others, they know. The people at the National Treasury and Planning know. But they're not being done. So who's supposed to carry the whip and make sure that these things are done?
So one of the things we are working on in one of our projects for strengthening rural governance for the right to food, we have formed two coalitions. There's one national coalition on the right to food, which we are still working on to make sure that the media is also part of it. And we are forming different grassroots organizations. And the reason why we are doing this is because we want to strengthen advocacy and activism towards taking hunger and food issues as a right, and stop having this stretched out hand of that malnourished child who looks poor and. So we are working between 2022 and 23 on a bill. We want to table a bill in Parliament that is going to give a legal framework for the implementation of Article 43(1)(c) of the Kenya Constitution on the right to food. Because what happened is, after that article was included in the Constitution, then a policy, the Food and Nutrition Security Policy, was developed. But a step was skipped, where an Act of Parliament needed to provide the basis to be able to operationalize that article in the Constitution. And that is what we've realized now we need to go back to, even as we work towards revising the 2017-2022 Food and Nutrition Security Implementation Framework. We need to also make sure that all these things Beldine and I are mentioning around food systems, around making sure that smallholder farmers are given food sovereignty and there's seed sovereignty, and we're not just using these seeds that are not reusable, because now you are tied to a company because you can only buy a one-use type of seed because it's not the kind of seeds we've been dealing with before. So looking at seed sovereignty, looking at farmer sovereignty, where farmers are not on the menu, they are on the table making decisions, and we make sure that farmers are the people who are benefiting from our food systems.
Like
you
that.
know,
Farmers are not on the menu.
yes, they should be on the decision table, and they should be the ones, getting the economic benefit of their hard work in their farms. And women and youth, making sure that we make agriculture attractive to the youth. So all this stuff, all these issues we want to include in a bill to Parliament, and not make it just another policy that will be on the shelf, because Kenya has so many nice, great policies that everybody implements apart from us. So we need to make sure that we give a legal framework that will hold the government accountable for the hunger problem. We cannot be speaking 69 years post-independence about people still, the issues Muthui talked about, ujinga, nja, and what was the third one? There are the three.
Education.
There was education, there was health, and there was hunger. 69 years post-independence, we have the same problems. only that they have kind of graduated with a different face. So we need to make sure that we are holding the government accountable, and the best way to do that is, one, to have an act of parliament, but in that act, make sure that also county governments, because agriculture is devolved, we need to make sure that also county governments are being held accountable, one, for domesticating national policies and contextualizing them to the problems that they actually have in their counties, but further to that, allocating resources, making sure that the rights holders, who are the citizens, participate in different processes when it comes to agriculture and hunger issues, and also that we are doing a social audit and public audit process, which we've done so far in our project, to see where are these resources going. Even if it's 1 million, where did it go?
How do you bring in the right holder to the front of this conversation?
Through a lot of sensitization. First of all, they need to know their rights, that they are not begging for food. It's their right as a citizen of Kenya. And once they know their rights, for instance, there are different group of people who have different rights when it comes to hunger, from social safety nets for the elderly to cash transfers for orphans and vulnerable children. Are they getting this? Because this is money that is disbursed by the government every year. Is it getting to the people who it's supposed to get to? And if it's not, capacity build these people to fight for their own rights and demand better. We are now in an electioneering year. These people must make sure that the person they vote for is somebody who is not pro-hunger, because a hungry person is an easy-to-govern person, because they're easy to control. So we must make sure that people know that my vote is the ticket towards my lack of hunger. So once people as rights holders, and we stop looking at them as beneficiaries or people who just benefit, because if you call somebody a beneficiary, it means they're benefiting from something. But if you call them rights holders, it means they're citizens of this country.
On something they can demand.
There's something they can demand. Right. And that's the direction we need to go.
As we conclude the conversation, Beldine, tell us about, what is it that you want? What a message that you'd like to go out to our audience this morning? When you talk about the Global Hunger Index and the work that you've been doing, and what Stella has just talked about, all of us being sensitized in this election year.
What I would like to say is that if you look at the report, this report doesn't even include the impact of the COVID-19. So it means things could be much worse than what we are seeing from the report. And it's not only in Kenya, the trend is globally. We've been making reverses to the gains that we have made. And I think for us as citizens, we need to now start making the connection between our vote and the issues that we see within our homes. So we need to rise up, we need to take action, we need to make decisions that are for our betterment as a population. And for our political leaders, I think we need them now to really stand up and fight for us as citizens, because issues of conflict, hunger will continue coming, but we need systems that are able to prepare early for early action, even before the situation comes.
Beldine Atieno, thank you very much for joining us. Beldine is Senior Manager for Governance and Advocacy at Concern Worldwide. She was accompanied by Stella Kimani, Nutrition Coordinator at Welthungerhilfe. We've been talking about the Global Hunger Index and looking at our food systems in Kenya and the situation that we are in when it comes to food security or food insecurity. Keeping right here for more conversations.